Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Live. Today, I'm going to start with my favorite Norm McDonald joke. He's looking in the mirror and he's just having a tough time. His wife is looking over his shoulder and he says, "Honey, gosh, look at me. My tummy has got this Dunlap over the belt. I've got these saggy bags under my eyes. My skin is wrinkling and I just look so old. My shoulders are slouched over. Can you just help a guy out and tell me something that is going right? Give me a little encouragement." And his wife says, "Oh, honey, your eyesight is perfect." Yeah, I love that joke because as we look in the mirror, we know our problems the best. Whether or not we're brave enough to be able to say them out loud and, heaven forbid, admit them to our spouse, well, that's where the rubber meets the road. Last week I gave a lecture that really, to me, felt like one of the med school lectures where I leaned into the science, and I probably would have given a very similar lecture when I was teaching as a professor for med students. But I got a lot of feedback that some of you liked it, and some of you said, cut to the chase. What do I got, and what do I do about it? Get to the punchline. So tonight we're going to look at a few things that if I take away the science and say, what are the symptoms of early onset insulin resistance, moderate, and severe? What groceries do I buy when I've got one of those? And what's the timeline for reversing it? I love the message we're going to talk about tonight. Stick around. I will share that I have fasted this week, and I've got actually, I think the glucose was, 57, and ketones, it just turned off again. Hold on a second. I think it was like 3 something. 3.9. So glucose of 57, ketones of 3.9. I did an on-site recording yesterday that you'll see some videos coming out in the next few weeks where I did my workout in the morning, and then I did a workout with a friend who's learning about insulin resistance, teaching his audience about it, and we worked out in the heat of the day here in Florida for an afternoon workout. So I got a couple of workouts in. I'm fasted about 60 hours, and you can see that I'm really practicing what I preach, that these problems don't go away without flexing my own mitochondria. And I can even use my examples here as a way to teach. I do hope to have you stick around to the end. There are questions that I only answer on live. So if you have questions, especially ones that are relevant to what we're talking about tonight, I would encourage you to type them in. My team puts them on a document at the end, and we sort through those questions because sometimes on a live, I think I say what I think I know what I said, but you guys help me stay accountable. So stick around to the end if you've got questions. Let's get to this story because I do have a few things that I think are really important. One of the biggest problems that I see with patients with insulin resistance is they're comparing themselves to their American friends. And if I could just push reset on a couple things, I would have them look I'd have them look at Willie. Willie was a kid who was I went to Honduras a couple years ago on a mission trip, and Willie was one of the kids at the orphanage. He was 10 years old. He had enough energy to power the whole house. He probably played soccer 6 hours a day. And if I could project what Willie's problem was going to be as far as health goes, a metabolic health problem was not going to make the list for a lifetime. Willie's kind of wild streak was very entertaining, but he was also brave enough to let me prick his finger. So when I look at Willie, he's a 10-year-old boy in Honduras. And for those of you that have been watching the show, you'll see that the glucose on the side, the ketones on the other side. When Willie woke up in the morning, his blood sugars were around that 65 to 70. He ate 3 meals a day, and those meals happened far before sunset during the light of the day. And then there were no more meals. This is the culture there, but also the resources in his body and his life are going to give him 3 meals to eat a day. And then he's going to go to bed, and those glucose will be used up. The average glucose is about 83, which is an A1C of 4.5. Again, super healthy, no problems. Maybe in America that would be on the that would be, adjacent to having resources that weren't as abundant. But I contend that he's never going to suffer like some of our American friends, and he doesn't have Americans to compare to. When he goes to bed at night, his ketones do rise, and during the day, they don't fall to zero. When you look at what Willie's life is, that's not just a random day in his world. That's a pretty typical rhythm of 3 meals a day. The blood sugars shoot up just above 110 when he eats, and at night they get down to that 65 range. In that 65 range, his body burns fat, and every night he is burning fat and then trading that for burning glucose during the day. Willie is on path to have health, to have really strong mitochondria throughout his life. All right, so let's compare that to an American 10-year-old boy named David. As David looks at his life, he has more resources available, and you might call that abundance, but in every other kid coming through the pediatric clinic, oh gosh, David looks really healthy. He's not overweight. He eats 3 meals a day. You'll notice that when you compare his blood sugars to Willie's, his baseline is higher. But if you compare it to every other American, he looks great. There's no problems here. Mom, you're doing great. The eating window for Willie and David, they are different. Not a lot, but enough that when you add them up over time, there is a difference. If you look at the average blood sugar for David, it is around an average of 100, which is an A1C of 5.1. Again, there is not a pediatrician across the continent, across the whole nation of America, that would say that that's anything except wonderful. This is great, no problem. And yet, as he goes to sleep at night, his fat does tap into a burning state, but during the day, he doesn't burn any fat at all. His ketones go to zero. So again, no doctor is going to say anything except, attaboy, you're doing great. Over time, this 10-year-old boy touches into that fat burning routinely most nights, but it's not quite as long as what his counterpart in Honduras would be doing. So when I look at the first level of insulin resistance, we're going to do this in time of reversal. The first level would be David, who's now made it to the age of 17. So here's David at 17 years old, and he's again done a lot of things right. You look around at his body compared to other people his age, and he might have a little bit of a pinch the inch around the waistline, but it's nothing compared to the kids who have type 2 diabetes at the age of 17 right now. His average blood sugar is just over 100, 5.3. And again, no pediatrician in the world would say anything except, you are fine. You are doing great. No problem. His eating window is bigger. He's now eating 4 meals a day because that afternoon snack from school is enough calories, especially enough carbohydrates, to be considered a meal, and it raises his blood sugar and comes back down. You'll notice the shape of his blood sugars are a little different than the last slides, and he gets home from his after-school activities, and then he has a real meal late in the day. So look at the length of that eating window, and of course that correlates to what he can do at night. His ketones are pretty flatlined, and you'd have to probably wait until about maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning before the ketones really do rise and support his system with the fuel needed to keep him healthy and keep him doing his day. So when I look at level 1, David is a level 1 insulin resistance. And David, his symptoms are not a lot. So if I had to look at this list of, these are the symptoms that happen when insulin resistance grows, but I'm going to circle the things that are more likely at David's age, and they're really subtle. Maybe he's more irritable, maybe his mood swings and he gets fatigued. He's got a little bit of maybe focus problems of ADHD. You can see that if I was going to watch his sleep, it wouldn't be quite as steady throughout the night. One of the parts that I look at when my sons give me a call and say, hey, Mom, one of my friends has a problem that I think a doctor would answer. And they say, and I don't want you to tell them that it's keto related or has anything to do with insulin. But those problems are some of those average problems like, well, their friend doesn't get up until 2 o'clock in the afternoon because the hangover lasts much longer than it should have. Or they've got ringworm, which is a stupid little infection of the skin that's from a fungus, and a normal set of white blood cells should cover it. So why is a 17-year-old having any problems with that? And when you watch to see, these problems are difficult for the folks to take seriously, because they look around and say, I am the healthiest person I know. I'm not fat. I get up and do my job. I'm fine. And all along in my mind, I'm thinking, it's level 1 insulin resistance. So let's go back to our slides here. Thanks for tolerating that sound check a minute ago. So a level 1, let's start with what do we do with level 1 when it comes to what foods should you be eating, what food, when should you be eating, and what to avoid. So when I look at what to eat, I like the beef and butter. It is something that's easy, simple, and it tastes great. And if I can get those, late teens, early 20-year-olds to have, less of the white stuff, what to avoid white stuff. And I'm talking about potatoes, rice, bread, pasta. It doesn't have to be super strict, but we're getting the carbs way down. I love it to be less than 20, but even if they aren't quite, that's not when to eat, that's what to eat. So when to eat, I'll come back to, but what to avoid would be the white stuff. And when I look at the timing of, which will be a little bigger deal in the next couple of phases, I just try to keep it before midnight. I mean, don't eat all night long. There's lots of forgiveness, so let's put less than midnight, which is super generous. And I hope the point you're seeing is, it's really not that hard when you're at level 1 insulin resistance. I think of it as they've had high insulin for less than 5 years. Their symptoms are super vague, and compared to every other American around them, they're fine. But deep, just like the Norm McDonald joke, deep inside they know their brain just isn't as sharp as it should be. When I point out that the skin infection that you have is it's stupid. You should not have it. Why are your white blood cells failing to take care of this dumb infection? It shouldn't be happening. And when I ask them to cut out, like how long does a hangover keep you in bed the next day? Don't you think it's weird that you're a young, healthy, male? My sons are boys that stays in bed from a hangover till noon. That's a lot. Anyway, so when I look at how they need to measure, I think of the ketone strips, meaning they should be able to pee on a strip and turn a ketone positive. When I get those conversations from my sons, I say, all right, just pee on the strip until it turns pink, and that's where you'll know the amount of carbs that you can eat. It's a pretty loose guidance because it is super easy to reverse. So next is, well, how long does it take? And I'll tell you, the fastest I've ever seen is 21 days. Let me tell you that story. When I look at that 21-day story, it's truly inspiring. This mom was really the person who talked to me and was in my circle of influence. But much like my story, she had a parent who got cancer. So her mother got cancer, and they moved mom into the house to better support her. In the house was this 15-year-old kid who's been having acne for about probably a little under a year. And it was the kind where he was embarrassed by it. Like he wanted it to go away. Mom, take me to the dermatologist. My friends all have this and they take, Accutane or something. And although the mom wasn't opposed to that, grandma moves in and she would have probably never been able to get that kid to give up his potato chips and some of that processed food until they rallied around grandma's health. Like, okay, we need to do the best job for grandma. So they went super strict keto. They cut out the carbs, cut out the white stuff. And here this 15-year-old kid has the most beautiful skin at 21 days. I mean, it's like a baby's bottom. The pimples are gone. And he and his mother are both shocked. The reversal of that insulin resistance was so fast. I've never seen it that fast before. But that's the testimony of what happens when you're in the first phase of insulin resistance. Now, that might be the quickest I've seen it. The average is around 3 months. When I look at David at 17, if I would say, all right, those little bitty problems you've got, if you can stay strict and keep that urine ketone turning pink for a good 3 months, you're going to see all this stuff go away. I have just graduated from raising teenagers, and when I look at what I did with my kids, there was a couple of great teaching points that I had 2 of my sons make it to the elite level of competition in totally different fields. One was in debate and one was a wrestler. So let's take the debate kid. On Saturdays, they would debate for 12 hours. And as the day goes on, it gets more competitive. And to make it to the champion round, you've now been debating for 12 hours with maybe 10 to 15 minutes in between the rounds because you kept winning. In the fuel source of every other teenager around you is donuts and carbs and processed and sodas and lots of sugar. And so teaching him that, hey, if you sip on ketones all day long, at the end of the day, when you're fueling with ketones and your opponent is fueling with carbs, you're going to have an unfair advantage. And of course, nothing motivates a boy better than winning. And indeed, it was great. It was great to watch the difference. And as a parent, I would go to some of the champion rounds and you'd see the opponent slurring speech because they were so carb heavy. And so great teaching example. He remembers that. He teaches other, friends like, oh, those carbs are going to slow down the way you think. Let's go to the wrestler. Again, wrestling in high school is all about cutting weight and getting to the weight that you need to. And as a mom who cares about brain growth, I don't want him cutting carbs. I don't want the crabby boy who's, spitting in the garbage can to make weight. Using ketones as a way to keep the calories low, but the fuel to his brain high, not only allowed him to do well in school, but when it came to cutting weight and then peak muscle performance, because he had exposed his body to ketones throughout the week and even throughout the school day, if you got to the 3rd round of wrestling with that kid, you were in trouble. His body was so good at powering the long fuel, the long-acting fuel, that again, that teenager used a little bit of information that transformed how he thinks about fuel for his brain. So again, folks out there, a little bit of education for those teenage years, a little bit of education for folks in level 1, and it really does make a huge difference when you plant the seeds that the carbs are not helping you. And I know it's difficult to convince them that these symptoms will actually go away because they look around at all their friends and it looks just the same. But if you get them to 3 months and they haven't reversed it, it's probably because they're at level 2 insulin resistance. Let's go there. All right. So level 2 would be David at 40. And I might be stretching it. He probably was at level 2 long before this, but it's a good teaching moment where his morning ketone or morning glucose starts out, at low 90s. Maybe he wakes up and checks it a little later and it's in the hundreds. I want you to notice the shape of his of glucose there. It's not nearly as up and down as it was in the first 2 stages. So that glucose stays around a little bit longer. His ketones are flatlined. I mean, they're closer to 0 than any other number. And David thinks he is the healthiest one in his world because he only eats 3 meals a day. He doesn't snack, and he's not the fattest of his friends. He has definitely a dad bod, but it is not terrible. He feels, I'm doing pretty good. Would you look around at everybody else in my friend group? I'm pretty good. So when you watch to see what his average A1C was, it is 6.1. And again, as an internist, I have been the one that said, not too bad, because we got other things to take to other problems to take care of. But that average blood sugar that's closer to like 125, you shouldn't be proud of that. You should not be writing home about that. But it's difficult. It's difficult to convince them that there's actually anything going wrong here. So 41 years old, he's now been under the influence of insulin resistance for, at least 5 years, but closer to 15 years, where that insulin has been soaking up his cells forever. And the symptoms he has, well, they are, I like to call these slightly chronic diseases. I don't think there's a diagnosis code with that, but they're like slightly chronic problems. Let me circle some. So this would be like irritable bowel syndrome. This would be their mood has some official depression, maybe gastric reflux. You look at, again, that fragmented sleep, insomnia even. You can say the word obesity, but you don't need that. In women, PCOS is a really important one. Colitis, the mood stuff that's all over here. I thought there was obesity somewhere on here. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. But again, that systemic inflammation that's just slight. Their joints hurt just a little bit. And I think it's hard to convince them that they've got anything going wrong at all. When I look at what the prescription is for them to eat, what are the foods? You don't have to make it too sciencey. You can say, all right, what do you eat? I can't stop by saying sardines. Sure, if they did sardines at least 2 days out of the month, they're going to be doing great. If they eat carnivore, that's going to be a great way for them to really find pretty good success without being, overly strict. Obviously I like less than 20 carbs per day. That's total carbs, not net carbs. And then when to eat, these folks, they don't get the generous rule of midnight. I like to use the word time restricted eating. What time restricted eating means is that window of food is probably 6 to 8 hours at most. And if they can really stick to it, I see a lot of problems reverse when they do that. If I look at the stuff to avoid when it's in the level 7 or the level 2, excuse me, I look at alcohol. Alcohol just puts a fire. So ETOH is how you look at alcohol. When they drink alcohol, it ruins their numbers. It just ruins their numbers. And I can go into the reasons for that, but this is the no science version. So when they're eating butter, high fat, and they're using time restricted eating, at the most, I would have them do a 36-hour fast, and maybe do it twice a month. That's going to be great. They're going to do really well with this, and they're going to find the reversal of these problems. I will tell you that I don't let them get away with urine checking anymore. I need them checking blood metrics. So they got to prick their finger, just like I do here on this show. And with that level of prescription, meaning they've got what to eat is the sardines, when to eat it is keep it in that 6 to 8 hour window, stay away from booze, and then you got to be pricking. I want that Dr. Boz ratio, and we went through that last week, to be less than 100 at least 3 mornings a week. At least 3 mornings a week. 3 mornings per week. And if they can do that, they're gonna be fine. When I look at the most common time it takes to reverse this, the average is 9 to 12 months of not falling off the wagon. And I think, if you didn't watch last week, go back and look. You are training your cells. You are training your cells to be in better shape. And that means that you got to stick to the plan. You got to give them ketones to burn and watch that training process not slide backwards. When folks ask me, why do I do this every week? Why do I fast every week? Why do I show you? Accountability is really important to me too. Reversing medical problems in my own before they show up maybe is important to me. But that routine weekly training for cells is what I am imagining every time I say, Should I have a snitch of something, something, or can I make it to the end of the fast and see what my numbers are? That, when I look at the other parts that happen in this level 1 and level 2, I have a tough time convincing them. I can see this. I live around this. When I look at, a good example was about a woman in her young 30s having lots of anxiety, been to see the doctor, sees a therapist. And she's really had only first world problems, but everybody in her family has anxiety, and she eats all the white stuff. She is, so far away from a ketogenic diet, it's not even funny. But living around and being under the influence of what it looks like to not eat that way. And she starts to dabble. Every time she dabbles, she feels a little bit better. And then she dives in. She says, all right, I'm just going to give this several months in a row where I try this. And she really becomes ketogenic. And slowly that anxiety melts. Her focus gets better. Her exercise capacity gets better. She stops a couple of her anxiety medications. And she's really feeling great. But it probably took her 9 months of that really strict stuff to get those successes under her belt. So I really think of that as the difference between the level 1 and level 2 is I'm having to pitch this. Like, this really is an insulin resistance problem. These symptoms look like what everybody else on the block is suffering from, but I can tell you it's not normal. And that's opposed to what happens when they're at level 3. Which is they're often begging me, I will do anything to reverse these problems, because it's no longer this chronic little bit of something. They have whole body pathology when we make it to level 3. Let's go look at that. All right, so here we have 55-year-old David. And I don't know if you noticed that 55-year-old David has a higher level of blood sugar at the top here. His morning sugars are still probably not much different than what they were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. If I look at the amount of time that he's spent under, highly insulin resistant time, it's a good 20 years. This has been 20 years in the making, but now every cell in his body is affected by this. And that's what I mean by whole body pathology. His average blood sugars are in the, holy smokes, this is no longer pre-diabetes, David, you are diabetic. Your average blood sugar is far too high, and this is a sign that you really have pushed it. You have substantial chronic diseases by now. He doesn't make a ketone, and I don't even tease in the middle of the night that he's making any more. At 40, I said, yeah, maybe he burps a few ketones out at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning. But by the time they're at this level, they haven't seen a ketone in decades. Decades. The only thing their mitochondria burn is glucose, and they have abundance of it. That when I look at the level 3 prescription for what do they do, let's do symptoms first. First of all, the symptoms are the stuff that's over here. They have kidney disease. They have type 2 diabetes. They have had cancers. Oh, here's the word obesity I was looking for earlier. Heart disease is present. Fatty liver, not due to alcohol. They've got immune systems that are compromised, respiratory problems that don't go away. They've got the autoimmune disorders that happen over and over and over again. These are the very severe brain diseases that happen routinely in chronic insulin resistance. This is not playtime. This is deep in the bowels of advanced pathology for an internal medicine patient. And that substantial disease doesn't go away quickly. It didn't come quickly. So what's the prescription? What do I tell folks they need to eat when they're in level 3? Well, number 1, there's no compromises here. They have to have less than 20 total carbs per day, but that's been what we've been saying even for level 2. The when to eat is they need to stop eating by 3 p.m. Almost always they have to be doing this. That they have such advanced disease and such terrible metabolism that if we want to find any ketones in circulation, the nothing burger needs to show up way more often. The other rule that I put at the 3 p.m. is that they can have only sardines after 3. And again, I think it's the ease of the menu when I say that. I want them eating a highly ketogenic meals. I don't want them having the casual ketogenic diet. If you followed any of the Sophia Clemens videos, she talks about a Paleolithic ketogenic diet. That means something very specific. That means the meat that you're eating is not chicken breast. It's not filet mignon. It's sausage. It's chicken with skin on it. The amount of almost like organ meat, not organ meat, but fatty meat is the only way that you can keep them in a ketogenic state. So it's not just carnivore like we could do with a level 2. This is intentionally making sure that that meat is very high in fat and the carbs are 0. I mean, the carbs are just 0. Oopsie daisy. Let's try that again. So pretend I still got those 2 on there. What to avoid? Again, alcohols to avoid, but they really can't be sneaking in with any of the sugar alcohols. The sweeteners really do throw a monkey wrench into their numbers. And these people need to measure with 2 things. I push them to get a CGM. That's what this thing is right here, a continuous glucose monitor. Looking at their blood sugars at night is super instructive for these patients. They can see that blood sugar should go down while you sleep. It should get down to what Willie sees. You should have a place where you're burning fat. And they are so far away from that if I don't show them in a place where the evidence just keeps you accountable, which is what a continuous glucose monitor does, there's no way. There's no way that they will reverse these diseases. These folks need to have 72-hour, I first start with 72-hour sardine challenges. And that will prime their metabolism. But they also need to figure out how to get up to a 72-hour fast. This is water, salt, coffee. This is similar to what I do starting on Sundays, and I break my fast after I leave here or close to that. But that 72-hour water fast or water, black coffee, salt, and tea fast is critical. The nothing burger is what's reversing that pathology. And they have to have a Dr. Boz ratio of less than 50 at least 3 times a week. Get up in the morning that your Dr. Boz ratio is less than 50 3 times per week. And when I look at the time it takes to do this, it's that 3 to 5 years. I don't know if I built that in. Nope, we didn't build that in. Okay, 3 to 5 years is when that is. And they're being very strict. I'm going to tell a story from the Pin Chasers this morning. The Pin Chasers is the name of the bowling alley here in the parking lot where I work. And at the 8 o'clock slot, there is a support meeting that I lead. And you can come and ask questions about the ketogenic diet, but you can also meet people who are also on the ketogenic diet. And there's a man who's been coming for a while, and he had pathology starting in his 20s, where his blood sugars would drop to too low. You think, that's not a problem. Yes, it is. That means he's overproducing insulin. And for the last, 40 plus years, he's been insulin resistant. So he comes along, he starts, I think, in 2019 on a ketogenic diet. He goes from 200 pounds down to 145 pounds. But the first few years of that, he made the notch of improvement, but really not reversing the pathology. It wasn't until the last year where he was really able to say, I acquired the skill of fasting. I really was able to say no, even when my granddaughter's around. That ability to improve his metabolism isn't just what happens in a ketogenic state of, measuring your ketones. It isn't just how well you eat a carnivore diet. It's that emotional capacity that says, all right, you messed it up. You fell off the wagon. How quickly did you get back on? Or you did really good at the level you're at, but I need you to take it to the next level if you're trying to reverse pathology. And my goodness, he looks so healthy. He has envy in the room for saying, look at how fit he looks, look at how much energy he has. And if you would have asked him a year ago, he would have said, I'm pretty good. But it was in that, in that regular pushing yourself to the next level, using the community of a ketogenic state to reverse problems that he was really able to level up to the next level. Because he comes to the Pin Chasers and has had, exposure to me, I've been able to really help say, here's a couple things that I think you should be doing better. And we're going to do our commercial here, which is that last week we said twice a year I hold this class with 200 students that I take them from whatever level they're at to the next level. So in this case, this man would have been at level 2 for many years, but he shows up at level 3. Except his skill set, he needs to get the skills that I would have asked him to get in level 1. And then he needs to get the skills that he would have asked in level 2. And if I try to shove all of those onto his plate at once, he will crash. He will crash and burn. So what he's done is add skills over time. And that's what we do at this class on the 21 day. Let's just go to the homepage here. So in the show notes today, you're going to find a secret link, a link that you can't get to when you come to our website at bozmd.com. That secret link is the early bird sign up for the 21 day. Now this list of what we do in the 21 day it's worth checking out. It's worth looking at. You're going to get a slight discount. Again, we're pretty sure based on the sales we've had in the last week, it is selling really well. We will sell out. We don't send this out to our email campaign for another week. It's just those who are making it to the end of the hour in the YouTube lives that are going to see this. This calendar just does a good job of marking. I don't think you can see my cursor, but go there for day 1 through 21. And what we do is Monday through Friday, you are having live interactions with me every morning, and then another hour in your coaching group. That we know that to change behavior, you need to have some relationships and you need to have a good teacher. And I will deliver on that great teacher. You will also find that I have been blessed with the best coaches who walk through this 21 day course, not because they've got a bunch of alphabet soup after their name. They're not all, they are grandmothers and teachers and mothers who have used the ketogenic diet to reverse their medical problems, or they've leveled to the next level and their health gets better every time we do it. So they will be coaching at different slots in the day. You'll sign up for which hour can you attend regularly, Monday through Friday, for that 21 day. And I'm telling you, it is not it's not a class for the sissies. It is intense, but it's also the kind of medicine that I would do if you were coming to see me for a seizure problem or a cancer problem. It is an advanced ketogenic diet, and you leave there with a metabolism that is revved, that is doing much better. So take a minute to go click on that link that's in the show notes. You'll also see it in the chat here. We are going to close the link on the weekend, so we want you knowing that I love this class. I will do this class until the day I die, but I only do it twice a year. And when I look at the feedback that I get from the amount of time it would have taken me to teach somebody one-on-one how to get this level of a metabolism in their life, I estimate it would take 4 years of seeing me one-on-one in the clinic. You get that in 3 weeks of this class. So we know that 200 seats is not a lot. We know that our popularity has grown and we expect to sell out. I really appreciate the people that show up to these lives on Tuesdays and that join me. And if you want the only discount that we're going to give this season, it will be at this link. Starting next week, we will push it out through our email and finish filling the seats. I look forward to everybody that is willing to do this. And just like the folks at the Pin Chasers, there's people that have taken this class 4 or 5 times. And this will be our 7th one. So there's a couple of that have taken it every time. And what they've done is they've notched up the level of reversing their insulin resistance. This season, I also am doing something that I have never done. Well, I dabbled a little bit last class in it, but this time I'm doing it with intention. And that is at the end of the class, the 200 students that want to use microdosing of GLP-1, we will offer that to anybody that's at the end of the class. I contend you aren't going to need that for most people. But I'm impressed with what I see in patients who've got to that level 3 insulin resistance where the chronic diseases have added up, and the number of years that I would need to reverse all that, their life expectancy isn't as long as it should be. To improve the pace of reversing insulin resistance, we know that you should not be starting that GLP-1 before you've revved your metabolism. We will help you rev your metabolism. And if you've got, good standing, that you've been coming to class and you're really trying, we will offer that GLP-1 program to the students that are in the class. I expect it to be, I can't believe how successful it was with the first class. And, I continue to learn for all the students that do that. And the amount of things that I've been able to reverse through really advancing metabolism repair to the speed and the need for the patient. I feel really proud of what we do here at the Dr. Boz channel. All right, let's get over to those questions. Oopsie, that's not what I wanted to do. I need to do this, and then I need to do this little fella. So we're looking at Sharon T is our first question. Let's see if I got that centered out there. All right, so here's some questions. Again, I love answering the live questions with the way our social teams have grown. I don't have the capacity to answer all of them on all the other platforms, but I do here on the live shows. So Sharon says, would getting cold sores often be considered stage 1 insulin resistance? This is my daughter. Absolutely. And just like what those fungal infections, as a wrestling mom, everybody on the team would prevent or try to, spray or, wax away the ringworm. And I'm just like, that's so stupid. You don't get ringworm if you don't give the yeast a bunch of sugar. So if you just have the kid in a ketogenic state, if it sets up, treat it for heaven's sakes, but just prevent it. Meaning the cause of a cold sore is a virus. Yes, the virus is herpes and it lays within the nerve and it's supposed to stay tucked away because your immune system is strong. And when you look at a cold sore, it isn't just that the pain and the irritation is happening on their body. It's that their immune system was too weak to fight it. And that is a terrible sign in a 21-year-old. Looking at the virus that causes a cold sore, it should be easy peasy to keep that cold sore virus tucked in the nerve where it belongs. Now, you can't eradicate it. It's pretty smart. It lives in that nerve sheath. But by golly, a 21-year-old should not have any problems keeping that tucked away. So insulin resistance for sure. Again, the difference between level 1 and level 2 versus level 3 is I spend time convincing level 1, you got this. This is what you have. And even with my own kids, I'm like, have them sip on BHB. It's the fastest way to get their ketones in circulation, and you're planting seeds. The longer they see that it is in the insulin and the excess insulin, and when you compare yourself to every friend in America, we don't have enough Willies to compare to, so they look normal compared to all the other friends. Don't let her get to the part where she's begging to say, I will do anything to reverse these problems, because it's coming if at 21 she has that recurring cold sore problem. That is just a great testimony. Good question, Sharon. Thanks, gals, for putting that one there. Carrie writes in and said, when do you say sardines 2 times a week? Do you mean sardines only all day or just sardines 2 times a week? So great question. I will hedge on that a little bit, but let me clarify, or I did hedge on that a little bit. I'll clarify. So Carrie, it depends on where the patient is at. When I see the biggest problems for level 2 when they're having sardines a couple times a week, I want to see what their morning blood sugars are and their morning ketones are. And if their ketones are 0.0000, like they're not making any ketones, then I'm going to push them to say a couple of times a week, I want you to do all day sardines. And of course, what I know they're signing up for is that the sardines are going to be satiating. The sardines are going to have a lower volume of food that's high in fat and high in protein. If they've got pretty good control of their blood sugars, but their ketones are a little wimpy and they're trying to get a few pounds off, or they've got just a few other of those, I call them smoldering problems. My migraine headaches keep teasing me. They don't put me in bed all day long. It's just a little bit of inflammation that keeps haunting them. Then I tell them 2 days a week, it's the 3 o'clock rule. You can have sardines are usually the last meal of their day, but if you haven't eaten by 3 o'clock, the only thing you get after 3 o'clock is sardines. And of course, what I'm trying to get them to lean into is eat earlier, put the sardines early. If 3 o'clock comes, that's the only thing you're eating. So we're practicing, are you sardine hungry? So we're really looking at them to listen to their body. But boy, it really does help them reverse what you're trying to do. Again, is put those cells into a deeper workout. And, in that 21 day, we do practice this as a group. There is nothing like, herd mentality to reverse medical problems, but it's even more important when you're doing your first can of sardines. Dolores says, if you are able to water black coffee with a little MCT oil fast for 72 hours, is there any reason to do a 70-hour sardine fast? Can you use canned salmon instead of canned sardines? Good question. So the difference between a water fast and that sardine fast is often where they're at in the metabolic revving. So when I see folks come into that 21 day and their ketones are 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 in the morning, and then they get to the end of a water fast and their ketones are maybe like 0.8 in the morning, I'm like, oh, that is a lot of sacrifice. That is a lot of, saying no for only a 0.7 return or 0.8 return of that ketone. I want them to rev their metabolism during that water fast. So, you see my numbers every week where I have really good ketones by Tuesday. I have pretty good ketones on Monday morning, and I have pretty great ketones by the time I go to bed on Monday night. The only things that matter for measuring the rev of your metabolism are the morning numbers for me. So if they're doing a water fast and the best they get on that third morning is a 0.8 on their ketones, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Their metabolism isn't strong enough to get the benefits out of a water fast. They really need a sardine fast. And what happens when you feed the sardine fast is the fat is donated to the liver mitochondria, where you put ketones in production much earlier in that 72 hours. And of course, once ketones are in circulation, ketones beget ketones. So even though you're using MCT oil in that water fast, it's not enough MCT if your morning fasting ketones on the third day are less than 1. So to me, I use that as a tipping point. If you get to the end of 72 hours of a water fast and your morning, I'm not talking afternoon, morning fasting ketone numbers are less than 1, you should be priming your fast with sardines. So what it means is the insulin is still too high. And how do you get the insulin down? You lower the blood sugar while having fat available. And when they're doing a water fast, the fat is trapped behind the insulin resistance. So they finally get to the 72-hour fast, end of the 72-hour fast, and a few fat cells are opened up to donate for that ketogenic state. But beyond that 72-hour fast, they're usually compromising things that I don't think are worth it. They are really robbing from their bones. They are not in an advanced ketogenic state, or they would have been there by 72 hours. And if you use a sardine fast in that process, you get an advanced ketogenic state within 12 hours of beginning, because as you lower the blood sugar, that's still going to happen, you've donated that available fat in your menu, and your liver will take that, it will spin fat into ketones. It's just that in a fasted state, your body's storage wouldn't open up the fat cells because of the insulin resistance. So every time they do that sardine fast, they lower their insulin a little bit more. They lower their insulin a little bit more. And it's the accumulation of doing, I would say 5 or 6 of those 72-hour sardine fasts that now they can try a 36-hour water fast. And that's where I'll know on the morning of the end of the 36 hours, essentially, is they'll have ketones above 1. But you can see it coming. We do this in the 21-day class. We watch everybody's numbers. We have you prick your fingers. You're up on a dashboard with all of your classmates, and you can see, I can see, I've been looking at these a lot, but you can see which ones are going to have the best results from a sardine fast before they ever should do a water fast. Anyway, I hope that answered your question, Dolores. All right. And then you said, what's better, canned salmon or canned sardines? So the sardines come in a smaller fish, higher omega-3. And although salmon has some pretty good fat, the sardines are really hard to beat for the higher fat content, the satiation, meaning they really do trigger those fat-based hormones that are going to be, pushing your cholecystokinin and pushing your leptin down, and making your leptin you'll feel satisfied. You're going to have the GLP-1, GIP, the hormones responding to fat intake will be stimulated better with a sardine fast as opposed to salmon. So I know people like the salmon better, but the results aren't as good. Okay, next one. Sonia M. How to lower morning glucose from 105 to 120. I have diabetes gene, age 63, keto for 3 years, A1C of 5.6, despite 20-ish carbs per day. Okay, I am not being a sales whore here. I am telling you, join the class. Here's what happens in that class is this diabetic, she is doing everything right. But she is doing exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of this video, where she's comparing herself to other Americans that are average. And what I need her to do is compare herself to other people who've succeeded on the ketogenic diet. And when you look at me and the coaches that I've led for the last 4.5 years on here's what an advanced ketogenic diet looks like, she'll think it's not possible. And it'll be the 4th or 5th day of that class, and she's looking around at seeing everybody's numbers and saying, okay, so how do I get mine down? And I have seen it. Go read the reviews where they say at the beginning of the class, I was really just doing this to prove to Dr. Boz that I couldn't make ketones. And by golly, I made ketones and my blood sugar lowered. And as I visit all of the classrooms throughout the course. I look at, the coaches help me to like hone in on anybody who's having extra special trouble. But we take care of these 200 people and we level up their metabolism. And they leave the class not only with a support group who's been trained by our team, but they leave this classroom with the knowledge of what it looks to be 200 other students. Now they'll know the people in their class, the 10 students that they have relationships with, and they now don't just have their own experience on an advanced ketogenic diet. They have 10 other people who some sailed through it. This is the 2nd or 3rd time they've taken the class. They produce ketones really quickly. They've got their weight almost all better. And then you'll find folks like Sonia, which have diabetes, and they are fighting the Western medicine that says, take the meds, count your carbs, inject the insulin, plan for the early death. And I mean death of brain cells, the death of the quality of their life. The only way out of it is to say, you got to get those morning fasting blood sugars down, which means we have to raise your ketones. We will get you there. And I know that with my whole heart. I know that there's a few things you're called to do. And I'm a woman of faith. I've been in a place where God has tested me in life. And I also know when I'm doing exactly what I've been asked to do, it's easy like butter. I love doing this. All right, Chris C says, ketones drop after eating. If I wait an hour or so afterwards, can I get ketones back up if I continue with your ketone packets? So just let's unpack. When the ketones drop after eating, it's okay. This is back. If you go back to last week, you'll see this very clearly. Why do I have folks test blood sugar and ketones at the same time? Because we're looking at how quickly your body makes insulin. So when I look at somebody whose blood sugar is not too bad, but as soon as they eat, the ketones drop, it means they produced insulin when they ate. That's not bad. But in people who've been insulin resistant, they inappropriately produce way too much insulin. And that's what we're trying to reverse over time is, how do you reverse insulin resistance? You stop making so much insulin every time you eat. Okay, so there's rules about that and there's ways to follow that. So what she says is, well, can I just drink some ketones and get them back up? Ketones in circulation will produce more ketones, so that is absolutely one strategy, but that's rather short term. What you want to do is make sure that the timing of when you produce ketones without any supplements lasts longer. So that almost always means you need to eat earlier in the day. You need to eat a smaller volume for your last meal of food. Now, this is very obvious when they wear a continuous glucose monitor. So when I look at what my numbers will show over the last 24 hours. So this is a continuous glucose monitor, and I put it on yesterday when I was doing that workout with my friend. That's what my blood sugar looks like over the last 24 hours. Now, in that 24 hours, I had, 3 workouts, and which sounds a lot, and I went into the sauna. So probably right where those blips went up is when I was in the sauna last night. And that was today when I walked out in the heat. That's what that was. But last night when I got in the sauna right before I went to bed, I only did 20 minutes, and I don't know why, I was just trying to stay in the habit. So 7:30 at night, my blood sugar went up to 86. Before I got in the sauna, it was 70. So what I'm showing you is that is a stable blood sugar, okay? There's no insulin being produced, or very little insulin being produced. When I check the ketones, if I would eat, they're going to drop. I'm going to make insulin when I do that. And when insulin is present, ketone production drops. So it's normal for that ketone to drop when you've eaten, especially if you're insulin resistant. But if you go back to 2 weeks ago, or was it last week, where I did the slide of what happens if there was a male and a female that I was comparing, how did they reverse their insulin resistance? They get into that third level of intensity of reversing insulin resistance, and the ketones don't drop much when they eat. Now, especially in the male, if you go back and look at those slides, you're like, well, look at that. He does bump down a little bit, but then he's right back where he belongs at 2 hours after eating. That is a sign that he is reversing insulin resistance. And that's how you take away pathology. That's how you get to live happily ever after till the day before God puts you in that grave, that your brain is working, that you have the quality of life that we talk about on this channel. And I love teaching it. I know that the folks that join me on the 21 day, it is truly the way you support this channel the most, is that we fill up our class and that I don't spend extra money on marketing. Last couple of questions here. Deb H says, is it still appropriate to use the Dr. Boz ratio to determine likelihood of autophagy? Oh, absolutely. Even when you are boosting ketones by making MCT oil, since they're not endogenous. Well, first of all, when using MCT oil, those ketones are endogenous. Those strings of fat go into your liver, and your liver spins out the ketones. So that by definition, you made those ketones. When you have those raspberry BHB or the supplemental beta hydroxybutyric acid, that is those are exogenous ketones. Those are the ones that we make in a lab and you swallow. Either way, the production of ketones or the circulation of ketones is what signals to the body to make more ketones. When you're looking at the Dr. Boz ratio, you're trying to have less insulin produced every time you eat. You're trying to get the glucose burned up and then get to the place where Willie does it every night. And that is to burn fat storages quicker, smarter, faster. So you're more metabolically flexible. The glucose goes down, the ketones go up. With insulin resistance, it's that ketones goes up that's so sluggish. That's what insulin did over the years. When you've been supplementing with MCT or with Ketones-In-A-Can, meaning scoops of ketones, your body is ready to A, produce ketones much quicker because they've been in circulation, but B, the mitochondria throughout your brain and your heart and your muscles can burn ketones much faster. I mean, stay tuned over the next few weeks where we put out this workout yesterday where this man with 100 pounds of muscle mass more than me is not keto adapted. I worked out fasted yesterday, 3 workouts. We're both wearing continuous glucose monitors. We're both watching what our ketones are doing during the workout. And man, I rocked it. I mean, I was able to not only keep up with the workout, but I don't know, it was a pretty good tie of who was more winded at the end. And I mean, yeah, I'm gonna let you guys wait for the video. So let me make sure I answer that question for Debbie. It says, the likelihood of autophagy is still what you're looking for with that Dr. Boz ratio. And when you use MCT, it doesn't take away that the autophagy is happening. You're getting the ability to be more flexible through those supplements. I mean, especially when I have folks in these advanced diseases, ketones in circulation beget more ketones. That is such a important rule to remember that, I have other influencers out there that say, oh, you're cheating if you put in supplemental ketones. I'm like, no, that's like saying you're cheating if you take a blood pressure medicine to lower your blood pressure. We need to help you get to the part where you don't need my supplements or you don't need prescription medications. But in the meantime, killing off cells, which is what happens when you chronically stay in a high insulin state. That means that there aren't ketones around. That's what ages you. That's what takes you away from those quality years with the grandkids, that the travel that you were hoping to do when you got elder doesn't get to happen because your body can't handle it. Having autophagy present is get the glucose down, get the ketones up, and supplementing is one of the ways to get them quicker to that metabolic flexibility. And we do a lot of this in that 21 day. Let's see, we got 2 left. I can do it. 2 left. I know we're going to go over a little bit here, but all right. Too calm. I love it. Dr. Boz, I'm curious if pucker up would be all right for those of us with ulcerative colitis. So again, ulcerative colitis, autoimmune disorder, a sign that insulin's been high for a while. There's no problem with pucker up. What you're looking for is you are trying to reverse insulin resistance. You're trying to improve the metabolic rate of the body, especially in that lining of your gut, which is going to need to repair faster. So ketones in circulation will boost the ketone production that you make. There's no problem with pucker up. It has nothing else in it, right? So that's a pretty easy sell. If you did buy the raspberry BHB tubs, and right now, the only place you can buy that is off Amazon. I will tell you, please, 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 if it comes to you and it's hard, just break it up. It is safe, but the heat here in August has done something to those tubs. We have, yes, tune in next week to know what we're doing with the rest of the tubs, but that Amazon product, please do not send it back. Please just crush it up and leave me a nice review on Amazon. What I was trying to say though is the raspberry lemonade has higher amounts of ketones per serving than the pucker up does. And many people find that strange, but they have almost 12 grams of ketones in that serving for the raspberry BHB, whereas I think it's closer to 9 with the pucker up. So I would be using the raspberry BHB if I had ulcerative colitis. Last question, and then we will call it a night. Constance says, I'm a 68-year-old woman, obviously postmenopausal. Can I safely do, or at least try, a 72-hour fast each week like you, or will I wreak havoc on my thyroid or damage my lean muscle? Wow, it's a great question. The things I look for, and this is exactly what we teach on that 21-day class, is I want to know how well you make ketones in the morning before you fast. When they walk into a fast and their ketones are 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, you are going to have a heck of a time in that water fast. So instead, we prime your mitochondria. We prime the pump with a really robust response of ketone production with, you guessed it, a 72-hour sardine challenge. And we walk you through that, not just doing it, but also measuring it. So you can see this is what you'll need to do next time. If a 68-year-old woman walks into a 72-hour fast and her ketone production is low, she's going to have a lot of problems. But if she walks into a 72-hour fast and she's been producing ketones, because we just put her through a 72-hour sardine challenge, she's going to rock it and she's going to feel amazing when we do say, let's try a water fast after that. All right, that's a night. Again, thank you for everybody who did buy the class in the last week. I love seeing your questions. And as you can tell, by the way, I put together this lecture based on last week's comments. Please put the comments in of what things you liked, what was confusing. And if you have taken the 21 day and you want to help spread the word, please share this link with folks or put a comment and say what you liked about it when you took the class. All right, folks, see you next week.